Greetings to you all fellow travelers. This is Grotnip, welcoming you all back to the logbook of a simple Lindworm traveler. In today's episode we are finally getting back to the battle report side of things, and this time around I won't be playing my trusty northern tribes, but rather I will be taking the Hegemony of Embersig out for a spin. I'm facing against Scions of Yaldabaoth, and the adventure for this time around is going to be Expanse/Banner. Unfortunately, life has treated me such that I have been unable to play any games of Warcrow for a while. But I have been hard at work painting up my hegemony now that I have all the Northern Tribes stuff painted and ready to go. My friend and gaming buddy Tanan has recently purchased his first own models for Warcrow, and he has, after a lot of consideration, chosen to start with the Scions of Yaldabaoth before the Mount Haven faction is released. So we decided that we both had excellent excuse to meet up and play, so that's exactly what we did. We randomized 3 scenarios and 3 feats, and each of us got to veto one of the scenarios and one of the feats, and that's how we ended up playing Expanse and Banner. Expanse is quite straightforward a scenario. As you can see, it consists of 5 objectives, 4 brown ones that are located just outside the deployment zones of the players, and each player starts in the possession of the 2 objectives closest to their deployment zone. Then there's also a blue middle objective that starts neutral. At the end of each of the 3 rounds that the scenario lasts, each player will receive 1 military point if they control the blue objective at the center of the table, another if they control as many brown objectives as their rival, and 2 military points if they end up controlling more brown objectives than their rival. So basically this scenario is going to be revolving around fighting for the middle of the table and trying to send expeditionary forces to capture your opponent's objectives, while at the same time safeguarding your own against counter incursions. Part of the reason why I chose not to veto Banner was because I wanted to see this feat played on my channel for the first time. In Banner, as the name suggests, each side has a banner that they will give to one of their units. But the gist is that if the banner is given to a character, that character cannot join another unit, and if it's given to a non-character unit, then you can't have characters join the said unit after. So this requires some thought when it comes to the company construction side of the list building, and it actually caused a little bit of a problem for me, as we are about to see going forward. As the battle rages on, the unit carrying the banner will earn glory points for their side by inflicting wounds against the enemy, with basically each wound being a point on the glory meter. The turn tracker will double as a glory meter for the sides that are fighting the banner feat. If the unit carrying the banner is destroyed or they are demoralized and forced to flee, they will drop their banner, which will, as we are about to see, will penalize the company in question when it comes to the collection of arcane points from the said feat, but it's possible for another friendly unit to pick up the dropped banner, and this time around the earlier restrictions on solo characters or units without characters does not apply anymore. At the end of the game, banner gets scored, so essentially banner does not affect initiative during the game as it progresses. At the end of the game, each side will gain a single arcane point if the opponent lost, EA dropped their banner at any point of the game. They gain a single arcane point if their banner was never dropped, and a single arcane point is to be gained if the glory meter of the company is in the same position as their opponents, and 2 arcane points will be scored if the glory meter is higher than that of your opponent. This is the company I chose to run for my first proper outing of 250 points of Hegemony. Forgive me if I'm not playing up to the standard you would expect of me. This is, as I said, my first time running a full company in a semi-competitive context. It took me to the night before to get everything painted up, as is the age-old custom of wargamers trying new stuff out, but hey, I actually got there. The main focus on this list is trying out the mounted headman in the Black Angels. I really like this combination on paper, even though there is a significant opportunity cost there. Black Angels are so damn cost effective and such a damn excellent unit in and of themselves that it is a bit of a gamble, I feel, to attach a character to the unit that makes them more than twice the base cost. But then again, the Black Legion cavalry passive on the mounted headman feels so damn powerful. Discipline is nice, and also having a 2-member unit joined by officer means that you will never go to half strength while a single angel is left standing. Then I wanted to try out the full extra activation module of having an aid and a strategos that gets attached to a unit. After adding everything that I wanted to into my company, the only unit that I could add for my strategos to accompany was the bucklermen, but as I quite like the unit, I didn't find this to be a problem. My original idea was to use Lady Telia in the arquebusiers, and the idea was that I would try and entice Tanan to get some troops close to that ranged unit, and then I would blow them away with a triple activation, effectively a triple activation of shooting with the arquebusiers, strengthened by the automatic hit from Lady Telia attached, and then I would trigger one of my extra activation abilities, mental communication in this case probably, to allow Lady Telia to immediately activate again, and then she would use headshot to double tap the enemy, so that would be 3 shots going into a 1 enemy unit potentially before they can respawn. But unfortunately, because we were playing banner, this didn't actually pan out. The other combination that I had in mind was to attach engineer into the Warwick. I, at least theory crafting wise, enjoy the engineer in the Warwick more than the named version of Ansera Neumann, because the engineer gives 2 rerolls to both attack and defense rolls, which I personally would evaluate to be better than just getting a yellow dice on attack rolls. And while you do lose out on the morale 3 in this combination, or sorry, morale 2, you lose out on the morale 3 in this combination. I also really like the engineer's explosives skill, and I think that the Warwick is quite a nice way to escort the engineer into a position from which she can later detach and blow something important up. Hopefully a forest surrounded by a bunch of Siennan elves, but hey, maybe that dream comes through in the future one day. I'm just going to come out and say that I have used more editorial power to soften some of the things that Tanan has put forward as comments for this battle report this time around, since by his own admission, not all the frustrations that he's feeling currently stem from Scions of Yaldabaoth or even Warcrow in general. So I'm going to be reading between the lines a bit and then transferring that information to you as I see it. And if I'm doing a terrible justice murder on Danan, I'm terribly sorry, and I'm terribly sorry to all of my audience for editing some of the stuff out, but here we go. All in all, the big feeling that Danan seems to be having is that he's frustrated at the competitive place where the Scions of Yaldabaoth are as of right now. It's frustrating for him that there isn't a full faction out there of the newly released stuff, since he feels that the pre-release, the Kickstarter stuff that's placeholding until the new profiles are out is of a different world than the stuff we are getting releases for right now. And I full-heartedly concur on this part. Obviously, something has changed either in the design philosophy or the ability to execute it for Corvuspelli between the pre-release profiles and the ones that we have access to today. And I am extremely confident that when we have the full of Scions of Yaldabaoth roster available, it'll be a competitive and thematic and crazy fun roster to play, and I think that we are seeing a lot of that already with the stuff, newly released stuff that we have access to. But there is no denying that the new stuff and the old stuff is at odds with each other. But if you don't let that get under your skin and you just live in the here and in the now, I think there is a lot of enjoyment to be had even while the faction isn't fully out. You can either embrace the way that Tanan has chosen to go with, that is pretending that the pre-release stuff doesn't exist, or you can play with a mixture of new and old, and the old is getting phased out month in, month out, so it's not going to be a long process anyway. The company that Tanan has constructed for today's game is very much a type of company that a new player would have access to if and when they chose to jump into Warcrow using the Scions of Yaldabaoth. The basis of this list is formed by the Song of the Dormant Science half of the box, as well as Beyond Song of the Dormant and some additional units that have been released since, in this case, Double Husks, the Tutor, Master Maele, and Samara. I really enjoy the combinations of units that Tanan has put together in this list. I think he has really given this stuff thought, and I think he has really found some pretty great things here. Firstly, it feels pretty silly to have a 40-point high command character buff up a 10-point unit of husks, but damn if that combo doesn't work. More evidence on that coming up in today's battle report, but I think that's excellent. Needle in husks gives the husks the important additional wound, as does Master Uruk, so that's not half bad when you get to use it properly. And anointed are a way of carting Irkalla the more around. Tutor is a powerful piece that Tanan enjoys extremely much, and he has decided to use the intact as the platform for the tutor. Then there is Master Maile to make the husks sing, so to speak. And Tanan told me earlier when we were talking about strategy that he felt he'd found a way to make Samara work, and he asked if I wanted him to tell me in advance, and I told him no, I want to be surprised. So run Samara, do your thing, and I want to see what you have come up with. Here we have the table for today. We were playing at Tanan's, so he did the honors. We have a single large patch of dense forest, so this one blocks line of sight, provides color blue dice, and is rugged for golems and cavalry. We also have a large pond of shallow water that's rugged for all units. We have a structure that blocks line of sight and is impassable. We have two pieces of walls that provide cover blue, and then we have a whole bunch of ruins and rocky outcrops that we chose to call rugged terrain that provides cover blue. We have 5 objectives spread on the field as per the rules of the scenario. Unfortunately, I seem to have displaced, pun intended, one of my area markers, so there is one missing from my from the picture's point of view on the bottom right objective. Here we also have some very nice graphic flags for the objectives. I'm trying out a new thing where the control of an objective changes hands. I will mark it with a flag on the map, but the flags won't be visible all the time, so that there isn't even more confusion due to the large amount of things that are going to be appearing on the map going forward. There's been a little while between playing this game and finally sitting down to record, so forgive me if I get any of the details wrong going forward. But there's a tense initiative role because both of our companies are rocking 6 command tokens, and luckily for me, Hegemony comes out on top, so I immediately choose to take the initiative. Tanan chooses the northern table edge and he starts deploying. Anointed go pretty close to the center of the field, and I respond by placing my bucklermen dead center. We then trade officer, or rather character placements. Tanan places Irkalla the Maw into the anointed, and I put down my strategos in the bucklermen. This draws out the husks, and I set down my war rig next to the bucklermen. Irkalla then joins the husks, and I drop down my last quote-unquote dead drop in the aid. Tanan still has plenty of stuff to deploy, so next down go the intact between the husks and the anointed, but a little bit behind both for line of sight shenanigans. At this point I have to commit either my Black Angels or my Arquebusiers, and I make a little bit of a mistake. I placed the Arquebusiers on the right flank, fearing a flanking operation by Tanan, but at the same time I'm leaving them in quite an isolated position behind the Shadow Lake. The Black Angels would have been able to cross the water with no problem, so that's on me. We both again place characters. Tanan goes for the tutor, and I place my engineer in my Arquebusiers. But Tanan still has plenty of stuff to come down, so next goes Master Maele, and now I have to commit my Black Angels. So I decide that I'm going to try and hit the left flank if nothing changes, so that's where the Angels go. Samara comes to support the whole clump of Scions troops, middle left, and my mounted headman obviously joins the Black Angels. Final deployments by Tanan are the second unit of Husks and the accompanying Needle to hold his right hand objective. This is where I decide that this is the weak flank that I actually want to strike against instead of the left flank. So I choose to scout Lady Telia in, and this means that I will be wanting to take the first activation so that I can try and snipe the Needle out of the unit of Husks. And with that we are all set to go and the game can fully begin. Except that we still need to name our banners. Since I have chosen to leave my Warwick unaccompanied by the engineer, he or it is clearly going to be my banner bearer, and Tanan chooses Master Maele. Round 1 starts, and as already stated, I choose to take the first activation since I have the initiative, and I'm looking forward to going for the jugular over here. It's time to give a shout out to Obiscus. At Obiscus Hobby and Gaming, he in his last full battle report had the special abilities and things of such nature pop up during the game when the special abilities were being used, so that the viewers at home could easily follow what was going on. So I decided not to reinvent the wheel, but rather stand on the shoulders of those better than me, and I decided to copy this approach going forward. So here my technical presentation is going to be a lot simpler, but I hope it gets the job done. As you can see, I decide to go forward with my plan. Lady Telia advances to within gunshot range of the Husks, and using her special ability Headshot, she can now target the character inside the unit, even though this is usually not possible. Thanks to the weak defensive roll and low wounds attribute of the Needle, Lady Telia manages to snipe the Dark Apothecary out, and this means that the right hand flank of Tanan's, from my point of view that is substantially weakened. I decide that there is no point waiting around. I immediately activate mental communication on my aid and push forward the Black Angels. They capture the middle objective, and I'm starting swinging them towards the right flank, where I think they will be more urgently needed. On Tanan's first activation, the reasoning for his very particular and very thought out deployment comes into play. He activates Samara and uses Black Rain to splash all the surrounding troops with Tinge. For the newer players, Tinge is the usually negative and dangerous byproduct of using unprotected magic in the world of Lindworm, but many science units and characters actually use Tinge to empower themselves, so this is the one faction that actually wants to have plenty of access to this stuff. After activating Black Rain, Samara then advances forward, and as they are an officer, this allows the anointed to trigger Guardians of the Family to essentially place themselves next to Samara, protecting them from any attacks coming their way. I am left a little bit wondering on how I should proceed from here on out. On some level, I realize that there is the possibility that the Anointed or Irkalla, for that matter, will use their next activation to draw my Black Angels in, but I don't necessarily sense the danger, and I don't think that there is such a powerful attack coming my way that I cannot recover should this eventuality play out. But I feel that this is a excellent chance for me to try and put some important pressure on Tanan by taking his right flank. Interestingly enough, in addition to all the great things that she already is, Telia also has Conquest of 1. And the husks lose their point of conquest when they go to half strength or below, which means that if I can activate Telia, take out 2 husks, which shouldn't be all that difficult due to their pitiful defense roll, then she can advance forward and capture the objective right from underneath the husks. A pair of these things I don't feel are enough to credibly threaten Telia, even in melee, so I'm confident that if I can shoot down 2 of these things, I'm good to go. Unfortunately, since I have already used headshot for this round, I don't have access to aim, and Telia fails to deliver. I only take out a single husk, and this means that I am in no position to claim the objective, and my activation was more or less wasted. Tanan continues to develop the position of his troops towards the center of the table. This time it's Uruk's husks who take their turn to advance. Now I feel the situation is turning critical to the Black Angels rather quickly, and also Tanan has not reinforced the right flank, so I want to shift my cavalry in that direction. However, I take the opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and I advance my bucklermen towards the middle so that they can use their excellent conquest of 3 when joined by the strategos to capture and or hold the middle of the table later on. This allows me to use offensive coordination, the command skill on the strategos, to get another activation in immediately, and this allows the Black Angels to gallop towards the right flank to threaten the husks and whatever comes to reinforce them, and also gets them close enough so that they can capture the right flank objective during their next activation should they so choose. Tanan laments the fact that he's in a position now where he has to counter move and try and reinforce the right flank, which means that he cannot do the more offensively important stuff that he would like to do at this point of the game. Tutor moves their intact closer to the right flank, and the important thing is that they park themselves within 7 strides of the Black Angels, which subjects the Black Legion cavalry to the back off command skill of the tutor. I decide to activate the Black Angels despite the inherent risk involved, and Tana chooses to trigger Back Off. Back Off is a command skill that causes a difficulty 2 willpower test on an enemy unit within 7 strides trying to activate, in this case my Black Angels. And if the unit performing the test fails to get any successes, their activation will immediately conclude and they essentially get to do nothing. So I accept this risk since I feel that I do need to start whittling down Tanan's command token tally. He's going to be bringing back his husks when I destroy them via a command skill, and I'm going to have to face back offs during the game. And there are other things that Tanan might be trying to pull off, so I might as well start chipping away at his resources. At double orange, it's quite unlikely that I will fail both of my rolls, and that will conclude the activation of the Black Angels. As things proceed, I do suffer a point of stress from back off, but the Black Angels get to activate. So I decide to charge the husks, destroy them, and use the extra movement to reposition my Black Angels. This leaves me in a bit of a conundrum. My company only has 6 command tokens, and if I want to get 3 extra activations out of the Strategos and 3 out of the 8 during the course of the game, 1 per round per these special models, I can't use command tokens on anything else, and this is something that I clearly should have thought more of before when I was designing my company. Eventually I decided that okay, I want to spend a command token here anyway, so that I have enough stress to enough morale to activate my Black Angels once more, should I so choose, and also this opens up more possibilities for Lady Telia, since she was also full on stress before I decided to apply discipline. Tanan uses his next activation to have his husks led by Uruk take over the middle objective. Usually I think this unit should be doing quite well under such circumstances as we see here. Conquest 2 should be enough to be on par with most units that the Husks and Uruk are looking to be dueling with, and the fact that they are fearless, they are golems, and they don't take any stress from losing a combat, which leaves them open to taking stress to avoid getting pushed back. All these things should make them quite good at taking and holding objectives. Unfortunately for Tanan, this time around the unit is facing off against a Conquest 3 Bucklermen plus Strategos. Charging the husks is not mandatory to get my Bucklermen into the middle and capturing the middle objective for me, but I thought to myself I might as well see if I can dent the husks a bit, so I charge in my Bucklermen, and as I was already expecting, they don't land a meaningful amount of damage, but hey, maybe everything a little bit helps going forward. While I positioned my Black Angels in such a way that they were able to capture the right flank Tanan's objective, and so that Tanan could not charge them with the intact, there is no stopping the intact from advancing into the capture area and taking back the right hand objective, thanks to them also being a Conquest 3 unit in the particular setup that Tanan is running. With all that, the round ends and it's time for no one gets left behind movement. Mile gets to advance, as do the Anointed, since even though they used Guardians of the Family to place forward, they did not actually activate, so they are good to go. My no one gets left behind moves see the Warwick move forward as fast as it can, the 8 hangs back a bit, and I start the long march around the shallow pond with my arquebusiers. Since both of us are holding 2 brown objectives, each of us, me and Tanan, get a single military point, and I get another for holding the middle objective. As this is the case, since I have more total victory points at this point of the game, initiative will change, and now it's Tanan's turn to choose what to go for next. Tanan's first move is to get my bucklermen out of the middle objective's contesting range. Irkalla, the Maw, detaches from the bog standard anointed that he has joined, and he uses Roar Irkalla in order to draw my hapless bucklermen away from the center circle, and then the first anointed lays into them. Tanan comments that this roar ability is what makes Irkalla so very much worth it. Unlike many of the similar abilities on the other anointed type units, this ability does not require any rolls, so it's a surefire thing to go off if your target doesn't have the immovable characteristic. I decide to defy, back off once again with my Black Angels. Even if I fail my willpower roll, Tanan will have had to spend a command token, and I can still activate mental communication on my aide to send my Warwick forward, so the activation isn't going to be entirely lost anyway. So in go the Black Angels, and I get really lucky since I roll a success on both of my orange dice, which means that I suffer no ill effects. The Black Angels then leverage their Chosen of Toghrul ability to put on some stress for the intact, and I whack some members of the unit down with their lances thanks to the extra orange dice and the extra offensive power brought by the mounted headman. This allows me to drive away the intact and take the objective on the top right for my own. Tanan was later on lamenting the fact that he was unable to put Frightened on the Black Angels, which would have made back off infinitely more powerful. Also, when I push back the tutor, Tanan did not manage to place his models in such a way as to secure a future landing spot for the tutor, so that he could have easily retaken the objective I just claimed. After the Black Angels have done their thing, I use mental communication again on the aid, and this time the Warwick gets to charge into the husks of Uruk. I carefully place my war machine in such a way that it's not actually towing the center of the table. This is important because I no longer have my bucklermen, Conquest 3 bucklermen, that is, holding the middle, and if my Warwick goes into within 3 strides of the objective, that'll trigger a check on who holds the objective, and Tanan will win by virtue of having higher conquest. But if the Warwick attacks the husks but never actually walks inside the capture circle, there will be no seeing how much conquest either of us have next to the objective, and I will still technically hold the objective for the time being. While the Warwick does not devastate the husks with its attack, it does deal some damage, making the unit more manageable going forward, and also this starts the process of getting some points on the glory meter, since the Warwick is my banner bearer. Tanan responds with a pseudo extra activation play of his own by moving Master Mile towards the right flank, where she proceeds to use the returned command skill on the husks to return the unit of undead minions back into play. Master Male then casts Carmine Thorns, dealing some damage against the Black Angels, and more importantly, this allows the husks to get into melee with them, and thanks to the combination of Carmine Thorns and red threads, the husks actually get to attack my Black Angels twice. They are able to make use of the threaded husks passive on both instances, and actually the husks get a bit lucky here, and they manage to get off their tinge inducing switch during both attacks. At this point, or twice during these attacks. At this point, we have a little bit of a conversation on how this is supposed to work. I put forward the notion that I feel that from the game mechanics and what's intended perspective, it feels weird to have the tinge effects from threaded husks switch ability trigger twice during this attack, but at the same time Tanan rightfully points out that all the instances of switches are supposed to happen individually and be fully resolved before advancing to the next one. So this means that my Black Angels suffer 2 points of tinge and a point of stress from triggering 2 points of stress from triggering the effects of tinge twice. We asked around the Discord server afterwards, and the general consensus seems to be at the moment that if the husks are leveraging this ability, there can only ever be one check the effects of tinge due to the use of this switch during a activation, but we are waiting for confirmation on that in a future FAQ maybe. What's important is that Mile has come out of hiding, and my Black Angels are well and truly swamped with stress and Scions troopers. Unfortunately for me, Tanan has been carefully pre-measuring the position of Mile so as to deny Lady Telia the ability to double shoot the dark-minded wizard. I don't mind too much though. I feel that I'm in a good place overall. The tempo, the trends of the game seem to be favoring me enough that I can spend this activation getting Telia closer to Mile, applying some attrition and some pressure, and then forcing hopefully Tanan to do something about the situation. So Lady Telia advances forwards, takes a shot at Master Mile, and even though I would have been able to cause 3 wounds on her once the dice have landed, she is able to shunt all that damage to the nearby husks via disposable puppets. Unfortunately, I don't manage to cause enough wounds for the entire unit to be removed, but hey, such is life. The Lady Telia's ranged attack, however, does have access to a frightened switch, which I am able to pull off on Master Mile, even though she didn't take any real physical damage. So now spellcasting should be a bit more complicated for her. Despite feeling behind when it comes to the tempo and scoring pressure of the game, I feel Tanan makes the best out of a bad situation and chooses to kill 2 birds with 1 stone also. He advances the tutors intact to surround Lady Telia as to stop her from engaging Master Mile, and he also manages to land the tutor within 3 strides of the objective, which means that the intact retake the objectives for the Scions. I ponder what to do for a while, but then I conclude that the right flank is a convenient fix for the focus of the game for the time being, so I decide to start gunning down the intact. I have to whittle down the unit and hopefully destroy it so that I can reduce that enormous conquest value that Tanan is now able to park on the right flank objective of his. So I decide that this is as good a time as any to use headshot. I wonder whether I should target the tutor in the hopes of taking them down, but I decide that the tutor is defending better than the unit around him, and dealing enough damage to take him out is extremely difficult. So I decide that the safer bet is to start chewing away the intact, and I actually managed to bring down 2 with my double shots. For the newer players, usually you are only ever able to attack once per your activation, but if you have a special ability that is not a attack, you can leverage both that special ability and an attack. So Lady Telia is able to shoot once regularly and then use the headshot ability to perform the second shot. So that's what I choose to do. Tanan, I feel, rightfully concludes that there is no tool at his disposal at the moment that can take out my Warwick in direct combat. So instead, he aims to stress control the thing by leveraging again the Threaded Husk's ability to hopefully put some tinge and thus some stress on the lumbering war machine. To achieve this, Master Mile moves towards the middle of the table. She lands in the capture circle, which will eventually trigger the check on who controls the objective, which will see the Scions of Yaldabaoth forces take the middle for their own. Mile then proceeds to throw the Carmine Thorns spell at the Warwick, but in a very unlikely turn of events, she actually fails. She's casting the spell with a red and an orange dice for willpower, and she's more than happy to accept a point of tinge to add a success to her roll. But I feel that this is now or never when it comes to stopping the spell, since Master Mile is suffering from frightened and she will have to reroll any dice with successes on them when she's rolling her willpower to cast the spell. This is also something that I was afterwards a bit unsure about, but talking about it on the server seemed like people feel that this is the right way to play this interaction. My aide, whose first, second and third job is to simply provide extra activations for my force, actually gets to make use of their spellcaster keyword, and I roll 3 black dice to try and block Mile's spell. I get lucky and I roll 2 blocks, and frightened causes Tanan to re-roll the dice with any success on it, which ends in a situation where Mile hasn't rolled enough successes even with the automatic one gained from tinge to get the spell through. And this is huge because it effectively defangs the husks as an element that could now meaningfully stress and tinge my Warwick, and also the Warwick doesn't suffer any damage from Carmine Thorns. So the only real effect that Tanan is now able to achieve is that he gets to control the middle objective for the time being. I feel that I now have the chance to impose a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation on Tanan, so I decide that I'm going to be going for or going after Master Maile from two different directions. I rest with Lady Telia in order to advance her closer to Master Maile, trying to force Tanan to counter Telia. I think Maile is not close enough to the husks at this point to shunt any damage, so she is in real danger. Samara, seeing that their ally is in terrible peril, moves forward to counter. While Samara's ranged attack isn't maybe as powerful as me and Tanan, especially me, thought first, he praises the model for its consistency when it comes to dealing out ranged damage when Samara has had time to get some tinge going. Samara moves in and blasts Lady Telia off the field with their powerful ranged attack, but this means that now my war rig is free to proceed. My war rig attacks the husks once again, getting some wounds through and feeding the glory meter. But more importantly, I put the unit full on stress, and now I'm free to move through them and reach a position from which I will be able to attack Maile with my first activation next round. And I'm pretty confident that the meeting of our banner bearers should be a very one-sided affair, and I should then be able to take commanding lead, at least when it comes to the arcane points part of this adventure. The round ends and no one gets left behind moves trigger once more. My arquebusiers continue their long trek around the lake. My aide takes a more aggressive position, and Tanan's anointed advance forward to get into a position from which they can get a ride from Uruk if and when he splits from his unit by using the Anointed Guardians of the Family ability. Since both of us are still holding our own objectives and Tanan has taken the middle one, the Scions gain 2 military points against the 1 military point that the Hegemony gets, so initiative changes hands once more. The war rig goes for the kill and it manages to squash Master Maile with no problems. I trigger mental communication from my aide for the last time, which finally allows my arquebusiers to advance forward enough to get into the game, and I choose to fire at Uruk's husks. This is extremely dangerous a situation for Uruk. He's tied down in a or attached to a unit that has extremely low defense roll, and there is only a single husk with him, which means that I should be quite easily able to inflict a large amount of damage against the unit, and the husk will only be able to suck up a few wounds before the rest will go on Uruk. Unfortunately, despite having access to 2 dice rerolls thanks to the engineer's updated armament, my arquebusiers leave Uruk alive with 1 wound, so I almost got there, but not quite. Tanan wants to put my bucklermen out of commission since they are my Conquest 3 element near the middle objective. Irkalla attacks the unit, shoves them back after winning combat and re-engages so that intimidating check triggers once more. This chain of events leaves my bucklermen full on stress, which means that I can activate them once this round if and when I am not willing to rest with them at any point. I decide to stall for some time by recapturing the middle objective, so the bucklermen walk away from Irkalla, suffering an opportunity attack doing so, and then I just walk into the middle circle and recapture the central objective for the Hegemony. Since I have activated my bucklerman, I get to leverage offensive coordination, and I decide to have my Warwick destroy Samara so that I can use the destroyed unit additional movement to drive my war machine north so that it can either swoop in to help out the Black Angels, clear the right hand objective of my opponents, or if that's not necessary, I can drive the Warwick towards the top left objective and capture that instead. Here's where the foreshadowing of Tanan having figured out a interesting way to leverage Samara comes into play. I have taken a part of Samara's card, their defense profile, their defensive performance to be exact here to explain what happens. As I attack and quite easily destroy Samara, they get to leverage their special switch thanks to the excellent amount of specials that 2 black and a blue dice will produce to coke them up to their gills with tinge. I think Samara has 9 points of tinge when specials have been spent. And this allows now Tanan to trigger the other switch that Samara has total of 9 times. So by spending a point of tinge, Samara can move or displace a allied unit within 7 strides, 3 strides. And what this means is that Samara is going to start a trek towards my backline, and they're spending as many tinge as necessary to get into position, and then once they are within 7 strides of another unit that Tanan would like to displace, they start spending tinge tokens to move around those units. In this instance, this allows Tanan to move, displace Irkalla in order to get them into melee and cause intimidating check on my bucklermen, and it also allows Master Uruk to displace into a position from which to attack soon after. This was really interesting and really cool a way to leverage Samara, and I'm looking forward to seeing what can be done with this ability going forward. Unfortunately, this only works against melee attacks, since you're not allowed to trigger your defensive switches when defending against ranged attacks. So if the Scions player can trick or force their opponent to attack Samara in melee, then this ability comes into play. Really cool, really well played by Tanan, and I really appreciate something with this type of potential and complexity in our game. Dripping blood from the gunshot wounds around their body, Master Uruk proceeds to charge the arquebusiers, and the anointed get to leverage protectors of the family once more, and they place themselves so that they engage my aid, and they are close to my left hand objective. We talk quite a lot afterwards that the way Tanan has been playing the Anointed, and the way I have been looking to interact with them as an opponent has changed quite a lot during the time that we have been playing Warcrow. And I think we are at this point in a situation where I have absolutely no willingness to attack the Anointed under most circumstances, because that feels like a wasted activation, and at the same time Tanan isn't incentivized to use them to attack usually either. So we have come to this place where the Anointed are teleporting around the field thanks to Guardians of the Family, but they aren't doing much of the actual fighting, neither defending nor attacking, and that means that now Tanan has to get some more or innovate more ways to get value out of them. One thing that he has been doing throughout this game has been to escort Irkalla into position from which they can be relevant. And now we are seeing the other thing that I really like that the Anointed can do. The unit itself has not activated once during this game so far, but they have traveled right from their deployment zone to the edge of mine. And this will allow them next, if Tanan so chooses, to take over my objective. And this is some excellent activation economy, and this is a cool use for the unit. 35 points is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, if you are dropping off a character without needing to activate that character to get there, not spending your 15-ish activations during your trek, and then you are able to take up objectives late game, I think this is quite a relevant and a cool way to play this unit. Obviously, Uruk does a number on the arquebusiers. He does a bunch of wounds, causes stress, I think, through intimidating, and also heals up thanks to his switch ability. The intimidating effects that Tanan has been heaping upon my defenders in the middle and in the backline are starting to erode my ability to activate these units, and also something is about to break, or I suspect something is about to break, because everything is full on stress and the willpower stat of the units involved isn't that amazing. Fearless would obviously render such tactics inoperable, but we are not working with fearless people, we are working with Black Legionnaires. The battle is drawing to a close, and there are only so many things that I can do at this point. I pretty much have to give up on my left-hand objective. There is no way I can push the Anointed away or deal enough damage to them so that it would matter. And also engaging Uruk isn't going to help me either. So what I decide to do is to charge my Warwick at the last surviving husk, so that frees up my Black Angels to do their thing later on. This also gets me some free movement that allows me to take my Warwick towards the left hand objective of Tanan's. I don't quite make it there, and I'm full on stress at this point, but I get close enough that a rest action will get me to the objective. I didn't pay enough attention in an earlier slide to how well Tanan set up the following play, so let me go back a little bit. When Uruk was attacking the arquebusiers, Tanan wisely chose to stress for a point of tinge on Master Uruk. I like the combination of Master Uruk with the husks. Because of the husks tinge ability, you can load up on Tinge on Uruk without having to resort to other means, since he actually lacks the keyword himself. Unfortunately for Uruk, however, he lost all the accumulated Tinge when the Arquebusiers shut up the unit of husks that he was part of. Then again, he was left on one wound, so if there hadn't been any Tinge on the unit, he would have been killed, so there's that. But now Tanan sets up the 13B turn activation by getting that point of Tinge from the stress modifier, and also by pushing back my full on stress Arquebusiers at the end of the combat. This means that at the beginning of the current activation, Master Uruk has a point of Tinge on them and they're not engaged. So he's free to use Blood Vial to place himself into melee with my Bucklermen, cause a intimidating check, and then effectively get to attack them twice. This is too much for even the professionals of the Black Legion. The Bucklermen suffer casualties and they are so full on stress that they fail their difficulty 2 willpower check, and the unit breaks and flees from its terrifying enemies. The game is drawing to a close and there are only so many things either of us can do at this point. I spend my second to last activation on my Warwick, I rest, and thanks to the large base size of the model, I'm able to advance and capture my opponent's left hand objective. Resting in order to get that half move out of your unit to capture an objective is an extremely resource effective play if one can pull it off. In this instance, the resting doesn't actually matter going forward because I have no need to activate my Warwick ever again, but it does allow me to capture an objective with a unit that I would not have been otherwise able to activate. Had this been for, let's say, the second round of the game, end of the second round, this would have been extremely valuable an activation because I would have been able to clear the stress and negative states out of my Warwick, had it had any, so that I would have been ready for the challenges of the next round. Even though Tanan feels that there is no way he can at this point materially affect the end result of the game, I appreciate him for being a good sport and going through the motions of playing the game out anyway to the best of his ability. Uruk continues his rampage. This time around it's the Arquebusiers who get intimidated by the terrifying visage of the progenitor sculptor before Uruk lays into them and sends the survivors packing. So the Arquebusiers break and flee. At this point it's too late for them to regroup, not that that would matter anyway. Despite my game plan working pretty nicely up to this point, I do get the stark realization that there is really only one thing left for me to do. Everything else is said and done at this point, and my backline and the middle of the field are well and truly lost. The Black Angels, finally free from that last damn husk, are free to engage the remaining intact and the accompanying tutor. I have to assault since Tanan has cleverly placed his unit in such a way that the objective actually blocks my charge. This is important because I lose the ability to charge, attack, reroll my offensive dice. At the same time, this is really dire a situation for the Scions unit. The Black Angels are about to intimidate them, win the combat and apply stress, which should end up resulting in the unit breaking, especially thanks to Black Legion cavalry. But we actually never get that far the Black Angels skewer the remaining intact and the tutor and claim the objective for the Hegemony. The Anointed attack the 8 because why not? But the Elven Magician cancels the damage by leveraging their passive ability I am but an image in your mind. The Anointed, however, are free to break away from melee after and walk on my bottom left-hand objective. And this is extremely cool in my mind. The Anointed have now traveled from my opponent's deployment zone to my DC to capture my objective with the last activation of the game, and this is actually the first time they have activated during the entire game. So some incredible mobility, some great durability, and that translates into quite activation effective point capturing at the end. And I think this is something that Scions players might want to take a look at going forward. At the end of round 3 and at the conclusion of the game, the competition for military points turns out to be quite close run a thing. Thanks to the fact that the Hegemony controls more of the brown objectives than the Scions, the Hegemony gets 2 military points out of the last round. The Scions do control the middle, however, so they get to score a military point for themselves also. Unfortunately, the feat part of this adventure turned out to be not a competition at all. My Warwick has topped the glory meter at 10, and the banner of my opponent lies tattered and bloodied on the ground, with Master Mile having been wiped out and no one having picked up the banner since. This means that I get 4 arcane points against my opponent's 0. At the end of the day, Hegemony of Embersig wins a supremacy, and the Scions of Yaldabaoth have to contend with a bitter defeat. Okay, some final thoughts to close this one out. Tanan commented afterwards that who knew that a faction that's capable of bringing 6 or in this case 5 extra activations to the table would be powerful. I agree with him, and even though I have heard or read some discussion by some Hegemony players that other factions are getting so many extra activations and pseudo extra activations that Hegemony isn't the king of that game anymore, I have to say that from my limited experience I would disagree. While most factions, if not all factions, have access to extra activations and extra activation-like abilities these days, the Hegemony ones I feel are so damn versatile and also so damn dangerous from the scenario play objective that while they are somewhat geographically limited by the presence or the positioning of the models granting those extra activations, you can do so much when it comes to playing the scenario when you're not restricted on doing certain skills or skill combinations, action combinations when you are using those abilities, extra activations, and you are getting to complete full activations instead of partial ones. So I also felt that this was really powerful in today's game. Lady Telia is also so silly. For 25 points, the damage alone that she can leverage is so high. Then she's capable of scouting, she's capable of joining a unit. In certain cases that makes sense, and she brings 2 command tokens for whatever reason. She's so crazy good, auto include at this point. I feel you don't even have to leverage headshot to target characters as I did today. Just double tapping units can be quite dangerous in and off of itself. Tanan lamented the fact that he felt he overplayed the tinge part of his game plan today. He felt that he compromised too much when deploying in order to get more tinge out there, and this resulted in the weak right flank that I was able to pressure through the entire game. Tanan also spoke at length about how he's starting to feel that the needle might not be worth it going forward. While bringing back models, especially to certain high-cost, high-performance units, is quite impressive an ability, there is a chance of failing that role. And now that it's a fixed role of an orange and a yellow, the failure chance pretty much stays constant. While getting an additional point of conquest and an additional wound to the unit is quite helpful, not getting any morale and willpower does hurt. And the biggest beef that Tanan had was that while it's really cool on paper that the needle provides a yellow dice on offensive and a black dice on defensive, he doesn't like the special switch abilities that the units capable of fighting with the needle bring to the table, because when you are rolling yellow, when you are rolling black, those are the symbols that you are mostly getting, so you want to have a great special switch trigger in order to make the best use out of these. Then again, Tanan really enjoyed the tutor. Getting to add 2 points of conquest to a unit was excellent. Getting that extra blue dice on defensive was really good. It made the basic intact quite a trouble to deal with, in addition to the fact that they had such a high conquest. And the tutor also brings additional willpower and morale to the unit. Back off fizzled out a bit in this game, but it was just because I was rolling pretty lucky. 3 double orange willpower checks, and I got 2 successes, and 1 success. That's extremely lucky for me. And also I was playing a faction and a list and a game plan that I felt allowed me to risk those rolls. And it would not have been a catastrophic failure, even though it would have been extremely unlucky and difficult for me had I lost those activations. But there are bound to be lists and there are bound to be situations that simply cannot afford you the chance to lose those activations, and you instead have to do something else. So that feels extremely powerful, and I'm pretty sure this ability is going to bite me in the behind at some stage going forward. As for my final thoughts, well, that was a Hegemony of Embersig ass game right there. I felt that I was up on the scenario most of the time, if not all of the time, and obviously I had the feed part in the bag quite early on. The high conquest and the extra activations that the Hegemony side brings made me feel like I was playing from up or from a position of lead the entire game along, and it was my game to lose the whole time. So I felt I was putting out fires and shoring up the weak parts more than I was trying to angle for the throat of my opponent. A powerful playstyle, no doubt about it, but at the same time not a playstyle that I enjoy all that much. So look forward to me going back to the Northern Tribes for my next games. The Black Angels and the Mounted Headman rock so hard. They were absolute stars of this show, and they were so fun to play. If I could swap the Warc Riders and the Mounted Wrathmen for these guys, I would do so in a heartbeat. These are some excellent cavalry that really know what's their thing, and they really execute so damn well. I really love this unit, and if and when I'm going to be playing Hegemony going forward from time to time, I will be surely busting this trio out. The Warwick also felt extremely powerful. Even though I didn't get to play it with the engineer this time around, it still presented an anchor that I could have my list maneuver around, and it very much was something that Tanan didn't have a direct answer to, which allowed me to bully the center of the table. And while yes, the Warwick was unable to capture the middle because of their lack of conquest, I was able to destroy a couple of really important pieces. The Warwick carried my banner to glory today, and also all that extra movement getting from destroying units allowed the war machine to, at the end of the day, capture the objective that was located right next to my opponent's deployment zone. So yeah, that thing is going to be a problem going forward, and I strongly suspect that we are going to be seeing a lot of Warwicks going forward. So I think each and every one of us should try to plan how to deal with one when we face them on the field. Okay, thank you for joining me and Tanan on this battle report. Hope you found it to be entertaining or educational or both. Hope to see you again soon. Safe travels, everyone.